Browne and welcome to episode 8 of my crafting podcast. This is my vlog about knitting and crochet and anything else that seems like a good idea at the time. And this is Shiloh, my little Siamese. I've enticed her in with a hot water bottle again. My voice is a bit croaky. I'll try and keep on top of that. So, I'm coming to you from rural North Yorkshire in England, which is where I live with my husband, my 3 daughters and our 3 cats. Right, I've been on holiday. So it's going to be a short episode, I think, this time because I haven't done much exciting stuff. But we've got Where Are They Now? I've got a new segment for you. I'm going to have a little knit group segment, something new, and my exciting new business launch, and then my plans. So let's dive straight in. Shuffle's notes. So, where are they now? What happened to the projects that you saw last time? So the first one, Lawn Flower, still hasn't really got a name. It's a pattern I've kind of made up as I've gone along, and I haven't really got a proper name for it. But it reminds me of flowers in the lawn. So again, if you've got any ideas of what I could call it that would be better than lawn flowers, then please let me know. I'm not going to show you this every week because it's a very slow burner. So as you can see, we have flowers and then grass. And I'm going to just keep on joining these motifs as I go along. And there isn't really much for you to see each week, each fortnight, because it hasn't changed a huge amount. So I won't show you it again for a while. But I am certainly geometrically challenged with this project because working out, you think it would be fairly simple, but for some reason I can't get my head around what goes next and where I need, because as you make this, on the last round you join it to all the others it needs to be joined to, so you need to know which ones it needs to be joined to, and I'm really struggling with that. So I've got a little piece of graph paper that I have to follow. Anyway, so that's how that's going. It's like when I was doing the motifs, it's just a nice little 5-minute crochet to do one motif and attach it. And I think I showed you last time, I'm just using stitch markers to show me where the next one goes. So it's going to attach in these 3 places, and then the others will be not attached to anything yet. I'll come along and attach something later. Oh, one of my stitch markers just fell off. Cat's having a wash. So that's the lawn flowers. I'm keeping that in a really elegant bag, you'll be pleased to see. Velvet toilet tissue. It's just the bag I've got that's big enough right now. Right, sorry about that rustling. Oh, the cat's cleaning her claws. I was worried that it might distract you having her there, but now I'm thinking it might distract me. Right, Hotel of Bees. This was my holiday project. So I was a bit anxious about doing too much on it before I went away because I did intend to do it on holiday. Well, stupidly, I didn't pack enough yarn. I had all 7 balls of yarn that it needed, and I had them all with me, but I'd packed the spares in my hold luggage, and my carry-on didn't actually have enough yarn. So partway through the journey I ran out of yarn, and it was a 9-hour flight. Well, there were 2 flights, but the longest one was 9 hours, and I had no crochet to do. And the TV I downloaded off Netflix onto my iPad, we stopped over in Amsterdam on our way. Did I actually tell you where we went? We went to Curacao, which is a little island in the Caribbean. So we stopped off at, went straight from Yorkshire to Amsterdam, and we stopped off in Amsterdam for not even 24 hours, and then we took the long flight from there to the Caribbean. And so when I was in the Netherlands, the Netflix said, oh no, that program that you've downloaded isn't available here, so it deleted it off my iPad, and I didn't realise that until I got on the plane. So I'm on the plane, I've run out of yarn to crochet, which is bad enough on its own, and then the programs I've downloaded to watch are not there, and it was all a bit of a disaster. The little screen in front of me was so dark, and the earplugs that you have to use, I couldn't use mine because they plug into my phone, they've got a different adapter. The earplugs that the airline provided were so bad quality I couldn't hear properly what was being said, so I couldn't watch any films. So it was a little bit disastrous. Lucky hubby came to the rescue and he'd downloaded a film that I watched on his iPad. But I did have the rest of my yarn and the rest of my projects in my hold baggage, but that didn't come out when the baggage came out in Curacao. And I have to admit, I had a bit of a panic attack, because I thought, if they've lost my bag, I've got a week's holiday, but no knitting and no crochet and no spinning and no crafts to do. And to be honest, I'd rather have a week at home with knitting than a week in the Caribbean without. Made me realise just how much I need my crafting for my mental health, and it was very scary. But finally, after 90 minutes, my bag did roll off, and everything was fine. So I worked on the Hotel of Bees on and off during the holiday, but again, I wanted to keep it for the journey home. I did, for the first time, take some knitting on the plane on the way back, because I figured if I did lose it, the needles, then it didn't mean I couldn't work on the project while I was away, and it was fine. I did some knitting on the plane, the first plane I think, so it was all fine, which was great. So I actually finished the Hotel of Bees, which is where I was starting all this rabbiting. I finished it in the airport after the long flight. We stopped over again at Amsterdam, but we didn't stay over this time. We just stayed for 4 hours or something. And in the lounge there, I finished off the Hotel of Bees, except for the border, which needed a different size hook, which stupidly I didn't have with me. So I finished it off that night at home. So it was definitely a holiday project. So it's done. I wasn't sure about the colours I chose, because there wasn't much of a contrast between the yellow and the white. Not as much as there is in the pattern. You know, the sort of sample for the pattern. But actually, I think it's worked out fine. You've seen this first bit. It's rather difficult. Perhaps I'll put a picky in here of the whole thing. So you can just see how many different sections it's got, and then we've got the blue, which I think is just beautiful, and then the edging. So this pattern is fabulous. I really can't praise it highly enough. I've done a lot of crochet, but I tend to do small projects. I don't tend to do big ones, and when I've done big ones before, when I was a teenager, before I stopped knitting and crocheting for 20 years, I would usually get to the end of the row and I had too many stitches or not enough stitches, or I'd made some kind of a mistake. And this was just so amazing for that. If you're not confident with crochet, it's so amazing, because every row she tells you all the way through, you know, where you should be. You should be at this point by now, and so you can't, you know, when I have made a mistake, I've spotted it straight away because the pattern is so good. And then every time I get to the end of the row and I've got the right number of stitches in, it's just brilliant. It's so well written. You have to follow it along. Some of them you can just look at it, right, I know what that is, and you can work the whole row. But a lot of them you actually have to kind of, I had to follow it along chunk by chunk, which isn't my favourite thing to do, to be honest. But to make something this beautiful, it's worth it. So you can see you've got bees' wings here, and we've got some honeycomb, and we've got some bigger honeycombs. We've got little bees. Little bees are so cute. And then we kind of repeat those again. And this is the small honeycombs, and then you've got little flowers here. It's just so fun to do. You know, I can get quite bored if I'm doing the same stitch again and again. Having said that, I mean, I do love a stockinette sock, you know, just a plain knit, knit, knit. But I can get bored if I'm doing the same thing a lot. And this, you don't get bored, because you do a section and it's a particular stitch pattern, and then you change to another section, and you don't get a chance to get bored. So have I told you yet that I love this pattern? You need 3 balls of the white, 3 balls of the yellow, or whatever equivalent you're doing, and 1 of the blue. I actually didn't need the 3rd ball of white. There's a border here. Where's the border? There it is. And just get a bit of random food off that. So there's a 3-row border, I ran out of the second ball of white partway through the third row. So if I'd have just done a 2-row border rather than a 3, which would have been fairly simple, then I wouldn't have needed the third ball. So that was surprising. I don't think that's a common experience. I guess maybe I have a tighter gauge, I don't know. Anyway, I blocked it to the measurements that that were in the pattern, and that wasn't too difficult. I hate blocking. I really hate blocking. So there we go. It's chunky. It feels substantial around my neck. It's cotton and acrylic, and I don't think I've made anything with that blend before, but it's lovely. And I'm really looking forward to the autumn, when I expect to be wearing it quite a lot. Right, Hotel of Bees, that's that done. Right, Stormy Sky. This is the project that I've really got quite bored of. It's a knitting project. Sorry, my hair's a bit wacky. And I've made it my focus project. So that means at 10 o'clock, I try and wind down and sit and knit something boring. Bit of a problem with this. I've got a new book, and last night that's what I read at 10 o'clock rather than knitting. So I'm going to maybe have to find another place for this, because I do need to plod away at it. It's not any bigger, I don't think, really. Not so you'd notice. This is how much I've got left. So it's becoming a bit of a slog. And as I said last time, I am going to continue with it because I can't think of anything else to do with the yarn. But I don't think it's going to be long enough. I did say last time I wasn't worried about that because I can get another ball. I'm not sure I can handle doing another. So at the moment it just kind of, it's all a bit twisted, but it only just goes once around. It stretches, but obviously it's increasing. That looks really nice, actually. It's increasing, so every each meter of fabric yarn is making less progress, as it were. So yeah, I'm just plodding away at it and just hoping that, because it won't block, because it is very springy, that by the time I finish this ball it will be long enough. And yeah, I'm going to have to find another focus time if I'm going to continue to read that book. Right, Stormy Sky, Bird of Fire. Took that one away with me as well. So this is a pattern. I've not been telling you who the designers is, but I've probably been putting it on the screen, so that's okay, isn't it? That's yeah, I'll put it on the screen for you here, probably. So Bird of Fire. This is a pattern by Sarah Wilcox. And this is the picky of what it's meant to look like. There we go. And it's designed for one kind of fancy coloured, maybe hand painted yarn, and one contrast darker yarn. So I dyed a skein for it in 2 balls with Easter egg dye. So here we are. This is where it started. This was blue and purple Easter egg dye in the middle of the ball, and then that's starting to disappear, and it goes to the red dye which was on the outside, and I think that's about here. And then we start the other ball, which was wound the other way, so it's the red on the outside. We're working in now, so it's going to get lighter and lighter, and hopefully get somewhere close to the end, although that's what it's going to be at the end. It's a very untidy ball. So there are 17 flames. So these red bits, or blue, these are the flames, and this is the sky. So there are 17 flames in the pattern, and I had got 10 with the first half of the yarn. So I guess I'll only use 70% of that last ball. So I'm hoping we'll get as far as seeing some of the pink before I finish. But I love it. I really love it. There's more to go at the top here. You work upwards from the black upwards from there at the end. So I'm more than halfway through the project for sure. It's lovely. It's really lovely. It's a great pattern to do. It's fun. There's lots and lots of rows. Mostly the rows are as you can see, garter stitch or stocking stitch, so it's fairly easy. You don't have to follow the pattern too much. You just, you know, roughly know where you are. It is really, really good fun, and because it's kind of modular, you can say, "Oh, I'll just do this one more flame, and then I'll stop." And it's a little bit addictive in that sense, but it is really good for, particularly if you've dyed the yarn yourself. But obviously, any yarn, it's just lovely to see the fade or just to see the colours change. It's beautiful. So I'm really enjoying that. We're doing a knit along for that, and I don't think I've said all the normal things, like where you can find me on social media or whatever, but we have a Ravelry group for this podcast, which is called Mel Browne Crafting Podcast, and there's a knit along on that, more on that in the knit group section. So I'm really enjoying that. The one thing I'm not enjoying much, I have to say, is the yarn. The feature yarn I dyed myself, and that's just a basic undyed yarn I got, but the black yarn is this West Yorkshire Spinners, and it's quite rough. It feels really rough, and it feels even rougher in the project, in the stockinettes, and like my previous experience with the West Yorkshire Spinners, the centre pulling is really difficult. It gets tangled regularly, and as you can see, I've got a bit of a yarn prolapse here. So I'm sure that once it's washed, because it's a well-known brand and a very popular brand. I hear people talking about it in podcasts all over the place. So I'm sure it's a really good brand, but for me, I'm just really struggling with it. And I haven't said anything about the yarn for the Hotel of Bees either. I'm really not very good today, am I? I'm sorry about that. I think I'm still suffering from jet lag. So the Hotel of Bees was Scapious stone washed, and that's all on my project page if you want to have a look at the colours and stuff. So a Bird of Fire, love it, really, really enjoying it. We'll talk a bit more about the knit along in that section. Right, socks. I had a pair of socks on the go which were being called the, oh, I can't remember, ombre socks or something like that, I can't remember, but their name has changed. They went on holiday with me and I knitted quite a bit on them. They're almost done, to be honest. And because I was in Curacao, now I don't know if you know anything about Curacao, I didn't really know very much, but it's a very small island. They don't have any agriculture really there. They're very much a net importer. But one of the very few things they do actually make on the island is a liqueur called Curacao, blue Curacao, or red Curacao, or lots of different colours, but it's actually an orange flavoured liqueur. And we've come across that before in our past. We used to make cocktails with it. And it is really what they're famous for. Because these socks are blue, I decided to rename them my Curacao socks. So that's what they are. Something really, really interesting happened with these. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get this across to you, but I'm going to give it a go. So here is what I knit before I left. And then you get to the heel, and you can see the colour change because the heel was knit with the same yarn. And now this is where we start again. This is where I started on my holiday to knit the front. Can you see a marked difference in the tension? I can. So even if you can't, have to take my word for it, there's a really big difference in tension. Now, you'd have thought on holiday I would have been more relaxed and the tension would have gone looser, but in fact it's tighter. And it took me a while to work this out when I noticed the difference. I mean, I'm not worried about the difference, it'll all come out in the blocking and the washing and it doesn't bother me. But it really intrigued me that the tension had got tighter, and I worked out why. The place we were staying had a beach which we were on every day, and we swam every morning, and it had a lagoon which was really salty, more salty than the normal seawater, partly I think because it was sort of trapped water, so probably a lot of water evaporated and left it more salty, but also there's a water treatment works. That's the other thing they do on Curacao, is they take all the seawater and they distill it to get the salt out, and that's how they produce their drinking water for the island. So they have a desalination process, and that salt gets dumped back into the sea. So we think that's probably why the lagoon was particularly salty. But that was me in the sea and then sitting on the beach knitting. Lots of salt on my hands and also sun cream. I was putting sun cream on every day. As you can see, I've probably picked up a little bit of colour. So we were wearing sun cream every day, and that's always on my hands too. So I think my hands were very sticky on the yarn, and that's why the tension was different. But anyway, there it goes. So you can see the colour change. Not as much as I would have liked, but I talked about that last time, about the fact that I didn't do it in the best way. There's the backs. That's even better, I think. Oh, that's much better. So I've now gone to 2x2 rib. I normally do a twisted rib, a 1x1, but I decided for this, can't remember why, to do a 2x2 rib, and it's quite long. I'm already back to nearly the toe, which I think is what a lot of people do, but I don't. I tend to do a shorter one. But what I wanted to do is to have it come up over my jeans. And I'm not at the stage where it's got to my calf muscle yet, so I don't need to increase yet. I'll just do a few more rows and keep trying it on. I don't actually know why I haven't got on and finished these, because it really won't be very long. So there they are, my Curacao socks. Fabulous. Okay, so I think that's it for Where Are They Now? Yes, I thought I would do something else as well. I have no new whips on the block. Being away, I haven't started anything new, and that's fine. So I thought I would do at this point, after new whips on the block, a whip count. I think it's really interesting. I've talked about this before. You'll remember if you've watched before. Lots of people have a very different approach. Some people will have one work in progress at a time. And when I was a teenager and I was knitting, I had one work in progress at a time. And it seemed perfectly normal to do that. Partly, I suspect, because I didn't have a big stash. I just bought wool, as we called it then, for the project I was doing. And that was all I had. Now, we us knitters, hobby knitters, tend to have a big stash. And so it's much easier to have several projects on the go at once. I've said before, people often seem to berate themselves for having too many works in progress, but I personally feel that if that works for you, then it's fine. It's fine. So I currently have 5. I've got 2 blankets. There's the lawn flowers, which I've just shown you, and the memories blanket, which is my knitted mitered square blanket, which I absolutely love, but sometimes I pick up and sometimes I leave. I've got 2 shawls. I've shown you them both, Stormy Sky and the Bird of Fire, and 1 pair of socks, my Curacao socks. So I often have 2 or 3 pairs of socks on the needles at once. So that's quite small for me. And of course, another couple of days and I may have finished them, and I'll have no socks on the needles. So 5 is pretty low for me. If I went back and checked on the episodes before, I would think this is probably the lowest number I've had. I'm not counting the Selbu mittens, because I've knitted them and then I frogged them and they're still sat there waiting for me to get back to them. I'm not counting them because they really are not on the needles. So that's my whip count. Okay. I have got no new whips on the block. I've got no spinning. I did take my spinning with me actually on holiday, but I really didn't do any, and I've got no dyeing because I haven't done any. So I've got a new segment. I have probably mentioned to you that I am shifting my career again. I've done it lots of times, but I'm shifting it again this year to encompass my crafting. I want crafting to be what I do for a living. Currently I'm a bookkeeper. I work for 8 different companies doing their books on a weekly to quarterly basis. And I'm continuing with that, but I'm moving into crafting as a profession as well. So part of that is starting this podcast. Part of that is starting to teach. And the other part is another segment in a minute. So I am going to start teaching knitting and crochet. I have taught before. I taught for 2 years for new mums, which was fun, knitting and crochet. But this is quite different. This is for the local yarn shop, which is Yarn Etc. in Harrogate. And I'm going to start next month, and I'm going to be offering courses on specific subjects. So I thought I would do a segment on courses so I can talk about what I've been working on recently, because when I've got a course coming up, I'm going to be focusing quite a bit on that technique or that area. So I thought I'd show you what I'm doing there, because they're not projects, but they're just work and research I'm doing. So this time it's Tunisian crochet. I don't know if you'd have come across that before, but I thought I'd give you a quick rundown of what it's about. So it's crochet with a crochet hook, but the hook is longer. My US friends would call this an Afghan hook, I believe. So it's longer, and you can get them, so you know, it's a cable needle. So basically it goes off there into a cable and it goes round and round, so you can actually have an awful lot of stitches on it. And of course, that one of the main things that distinguishes crochet from knitting is that you only have one stitch at a time. So it is, you might think it's a little bit of a cross between knitting and crochet, but it is definitely crochet. So sorry about that. Right, so I made up a couple of swatches that I'm dropping off to the shop today, so I thought I would just show you them. This is Tunisian simple stitch. Sorry, I thought the timer wasn't moving on there. So this is a very simple stitch. It's a basic stitch, and you know, it's very functional. You can make everything. It's very quite a thick fabric it makes, very good for protecting things. And that is basically with the long needle, you go through and you work each stitch, and you add up to having how many you'll have on there, just about 20, 25. And then you work them all back, and get down to one stitch again. So each row is worked in 2 passes, there and back. So that's simple stitch. And this one is Tunisian lattice stitch. It's lovely, isn't it? Let me show you the back as well. And that's quite thick. It's very rolly. I'm trying to get it to stay flat. I didn't show you the back of the simple stitch. So there are lots of really, really lovely stitches. This one is mesh stitch, and ooh, what's that one? Don't know. I'll put it on the screen. I think I've missed out. Oh yeah, this is funny. What would you say that was? That was. You saw that. I would say it looks like brioche knitted, but it's Tunisian knit stitch. So it looks like knitting. It's very, very thick though, much thicker than you'd ever get knitting. So again, it's got its place. You probably wouldn't make a garment with this, but but it's great for stuff that's going to be protective. So in the course we're going to be making an iPad case. So one other thing I did was a mitered square. So these are little swatches I'm making for that course, and that's running in Harrogate at Yarn Etc. next month. So you can go onto the Facebook page if you're local. Right, that is the courses segment. Knit group. So just a couple things. The knit along for the Bird of Fire is still going on. Don't think anybody's finished yet. All of us that are currently taking part have started, but it's not too late to start if you want to have a go. The designer is knitting with us, and that's great because a couple of us have had a couple of questions and we've been able to ask her, which has been great. And there's a tag for Ravelry for that. So yeah, that's great fun. If you fancy taking part, there's no end date on it. It's a very informal arrangement. So just come along, have a look at the thread on the Ravelry group and join in if you fancy. We'd love to see your pics and see what you're doing. And the other thing was virtual knit group. Me and my best mate, Doll Belly Knits, she has a podcast as well. We've been talking a bit about virtual knit group recently because when I was away last week, she managed to get to knit group for the first time in months and I wasn't there, so that was a bit frustrating. So I took a photo of me sat there knitting in Curacao and sent it to them, and they took a photo of them knitting all together and sent it to me. So we had a bit of a virtual knit group, which was really, really fun. To just kind of know that we were sitting knitting at the same time, and it was morning for me, although it was afternoon for them, but it didn't really make any difference. So I thought this was quite a fun idea, that to have a virtual knit group, and if you are on a Wednesday afternoon, and that's a UK Wednesday afternoon, so it's going to be 1 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon is going to be in the States, 12, 11, 10, 8, oh, it's 8 in the morning, whew, 8 or even earlier, so the US contingent probably won't make that, but if you are somewhere on a Wednesday afternoon between 1 and 3, knitting somewhere or crocheting somewhere or doing anything crafty, then just take a photo, a selfie or whatever, and stick it on Instagram with the hashtag virtual knit group. And I will be looking out for that, and I will send a picture as well, and then we can all be knitting together. It'll be fun. So there we go, that's knit group. What's next? Something new. Ooh, this is exciting. So when I heard that we were going to have a stopover in Amsterdam on the way, my thoughts turned to the Stephen West shop, Stephen and Penelope in Amsterdam. And in fact, we did go there. So when we arrived on the plane, it was kind of midday. So we dumped our bags in the hotel and we got on the train and went into Amsterdam, which is about 20 minutes ride from the airport, Schiphol Airport. And we wandered about eating bitterballen and drinking beer, and we went to the shop. It's very exciting. I was going to buy 2 skeins, one for me and one for Doll Belly Knits. But actually my husband was with me and he quite fancied some of the yarn as well, so I ended up buying 3 skeins. As you can imagine, it's not cheap there, but it was worth it. I just realised I forgot to give Doll Belly something I meant to. So I got one of these for her, which is just a conversion chart for needle sizes. Very handy. I shall keep this here because when I share a project, I do mean to talk about what size needles I'm using and the yarns, but I often forget, as I have today. So I shall keep this with me for conversion. Anyway, that wasn't really the main event. So Dave and I, my husband, got quite interested by a brand called Undercover Otter. When we were kids, there was a TV program, a cartoon called Undercover Elephant, and it was very silly and very good. So Undercover Otter, and otters are my favourite animals. So we were drawn to this for that reason. So this was my colour. You can probably see the fact that I do quite like this colour. Teals and purples and are my favourite. So this is sock yarn. It is absolutely gorgeous. 80% merino superwash, 20% nylon. It's a standard 100 grams for 400 meters, and the colourway is Squirm Scumbot. No, Scumbot. Don't know. I'm finding it hard to work this out. Scumbot, I think, is the colourway, which is fabulous. And this one is what my husband chose. You'll have noticed there's a bit of similarity here. His corporate colours, his company colours are pink, and so I'm making pink socks all the time, and this is the colour he chose. And this one is the same, but it's Rare Export is the colourway. So I shall be making lots of socks. I don't know what they actually look like inside. I haven't taken the band off. I was waiting until I showed you to take the band off and actually have a look at the skein. One of the things that I find about buying yarn, particularly the expensive stuff, is that I really want to know when I see it in the skein what it's going to look like knitted up. And I quite often see a skein of yarn which looks really, really pretty, and it's got all these lovely colours and it's fabulous, but when it's knitted up, I don't like the look of it. I am quite fussy with that kind of thing. I don't like too many colour shifts and kind of splotches of colour. I don't enjoy that, so I prefer to have a certain amount of the colour before it changes. So what I really want to do is this, which is what I've been dying to do since I first saw it, but I've been waiting to do because I know I will not get it back to looking as it should do, and I wanted to show you it. Oh, I see already I've made a mess of it. So the colour repeats are not very long, so it's not gonna be it's 10 stitches or something there, so it won't be in an entire row. It won't be an entire row of any colour anywhere, so I don't know how that will come out. Again, it's not my favourite option for yarn, but it is such beautiful colours. And I don't know if you spotted, there's some really interesting chunks of purple, which is my other favourite colour. Some really, really deep bits. Once I put this in front of my face to help it focus, I can't see what you're seeing, so I have no idea until I edit it whether you're seeing something good or not. Right, so I will attempt to put that back into some kind of order. There we go, perfect. Okay, so something new, very excited about that. So those will be my next socks. Right, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about my new business. I was looking 6 months ago, I wanted to go on to a knitting crochet retreat, and by that I mean just a kind of couple, 2-3 days away, somewhere where somebody will look after me, feed me, I won't have to do any washing up or meal planning, and I can just sit and knit and crochet and relax. So I was looking around in Yorkshire for something that fitted that bill, and I couldn't find anything, not that it was in my price range or that wasn't too far away or whatever. So I decided to organise one, and once I started thinking down that line, it just turned into something bigger, and I started a business on Tuesday. I launched it called Creative Escape, and it is a business organising creative retreats in the north of England. It may well stretch beyond the north of England, and it certainly will stretch beyond knitting and crochet. I already have tutors lined up for creative writing and art retreats, but to start off with, I have 3 retreats set up for the autumn, one in October, one in November, one that is the very beginning of December, and they're all in Yorkshire and they're all knitting and crochet. So the business is Creative Escape. You can see it with creativeescape.org.uk. Obviously, those of you guys that are in America, very unlikely to get any interest in that. But if you are in the UK and you fancy coming up to Yorkshire, I can collect you from the train station, the bus station or the airport. And come and have a retreat and have some quiet time in our beautiful county. So I'm not going to talk about that every... well, not much anyway, because there won't be an awful lot new, but I will keep you up to date with what's going on. And the Ravelry page for that as well, I don't know how useful it'll be, but I've put each of the escapes on there, so you can have a look at what's involved and what the prices are and all that kind of stuff. If it doesn't prove to be useful, I'll just delete that group, but it's there just in case you want to have a look. Okay, so we're nearly done. Plans. All my, I've got a box of next up projects. So I bought the pattern, I've printed the pattern, I've put the yarn and the pattern together, and they're all in a box. My next up projects are actually all knitting, which is lovely, but I just really want some more crochet, so I don't really know what I'm going to do next. As I said earlier on, I'm down to just 5 whips, which is low for me, and when I finish the socks I'll be down to 4, and I suspect I'll finish the Bird of Fire in the next week. So that will be really 2 long-term projects and 1 ongoing, so I will probably have a bit of a cast on at that point. I frogged my 10-stitch blankets, and so I have that ball I showed you last time of chunky, or is it Aran? Which one is it? Either chunky or Aran weight yarn, and lots of other balls. I've been using those actually to make these. The balls that I would have been used for the 10-stitch blanket I've been using to make these, which is quite handy. I've got a few of those, and I might do a corner-to-corner blanket with that, which should be crochet. So I still have plans to dye some mini skeins. I do have 200 grams of sock yarn left for one of the shawl project crochet patterns. But other than that, I really don't know what I'm going to do next. I just need to pick up the projects that are in my up next and just crack on with them. I've got a jumper, a sweater in there with a hood, and I haven't made a garment for a long time, so I'll probably crack on with that at some point. So I think that's everything. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate you coming to spend some time with me, whether you're new or you've been before. Thank you. Let's have a last little peek at my delightful cat. Oh, say hello. Oh, did you hear that? She's so delightful. Can you hear her purring? She is adorable. Right, so I can put that in the right place without dropping it on the floor. Excellent. Okay, so thank you very much for watching. If you've enjoyed it, please do click the thumbs up, and if you want to hear more, then subscribe and click the little bell. Pop on over to the Ravelry group, and I'll put a thread in there with all of the links to everything I've talked about, the patterns, the podcast, the people, everything that I mentioned. There'll be links in there, and the link for that page will be down below. So you can go straight to Ravelry and then have a look at everything there. If there's anything in particular about this video that you found interesting, do please make a comment. I really do love it when people just get involved and just say something, you know, the colour of that yarn's fabulous, or whatever, undercover elephant, I remember that, or something like that. Just do get in touch and say hi. It really does make my day when somebody does that. Happy crafting, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks. Bye.